This is actually the first flight on the second day of Maiden for the P47, and this didn't go so good. The important thing to remember here that this is all my fault. I knew enough to go over all the nuts and bolts the night before, but I missed one set screw. And when you got 21 pounds of plane up on retracts, that one set screw can mean a lot. The good news is that repairing this wasn't as bad as I thought, and we did a whole story on that you'll find in the how-to section of my site. It's still a lousy way to start off a new day with a new airplane. This is 1 week later. The retract's been repaired and we got some decent weather. Assuming that the retract repair holds up, I wanted to use this day to test more of the capabilities of the P47. There's nothing better than flying time to get used to a new airplane so you can get to see how it wants to fly. Then I can make ever smaller adjustments to get the plane more predictable so it flies the same way every time I pick up the transmitter. I usually do a bunch of takeoffs and landings with a new airplane, because that lets me see how it likes to do that and what kind of power I have available from the motor. In this case, the EME 60 is very strong and handles this 21-pound airplane with ease. And right now it's underpropped just a little bit. We didn't want to load the motor down too much. And it turns out the motor wasn't too worried about being overloaded. But then on landings we get to see how stable the idle is. And here again, the EME 60 is running perfectly. I've made one tiny high-end mixture adjustment, and that's all we've done since this motor was brand new. The Top-Flite P47 comes with 5-inch wheels, and I aligned them carefully and greased up the axles. And that's when we found out that 21 pounds of airplane is going to roll a little ways. I think the idle is going to come down a little more once we get this motor broken in, and that'll help landing some also. And as you can see, I'm still figuring out how high I want this plane on approach. Because right here I get about midway in the field and think I better just go around. I was pretty sure I was going to roll off the end of the field that time. All these takeoffs and landings would show me that the Top-Flite P47 is very stable at the lower speeds. We had some reasonably stiff crosswinds, so it was getting bounced around a little bit, but it was very predictable. And when it got close to the ground, it'd level right out. A little bit of elevator and it'll settle right in. And here's where it rolls off the end of the field. I was finding out that when you pull this P47 wing through the air real fast, it wants to go up some. I wound up making two simple flight modes. One is for normal flying, where we're flying at speed, and that has a little down elevator dialed in. And I have another one for landing, where the idle comes down a little bit, and we take some of that down elevator out. Doing a figure 8 like this over the field gives me a little better sense of what the plane is like when you start doing a tighter corner. And the Top-Flite P47 wants a little bit of rudder to keep the tail up during the turns, but other than that, it's pretty much laid over and pulling some elevator and it goes right around. At this point, I'm still getting used to the rudder and using more and more of it and see what happens. If you're going to fly any kind of fighter, these relatively low passes are mandatory. Warbirds don't look right when they're flown like a trainer. All those people behind you at Warbird meets are waiting for you to make a nice low pass and then pull it up into a victory roll. The EME 60 motor in this P47 makes this easy. And you can get more than one roll out of it without any problem. This P47 covers a lot of ground pretty quickly, and on our field that means you got to pay attention to where the trees are. This big tree right below me now has been decorated with lots of airplanes over the years. Not all warbirds fly well inverted, but the Top-Flite P47 does it just fine. And I gotta look out for that tree again. Okay, some of these low passes are just because I like watching them go by too. Making all these passes lets you build up some stick time so you get more comfortable doing things closer to the ground. And there's a couple of seconds in this next pass where I kind of wish I hadn't done this. But it handled well, listened to the elevator, and it went back up. This is the last day of the Maiden series, and we're just more or less checking things out this time around. One of the things I'm finding with this plane is it wants to jump in the air pretty quick, and as bouncy as the field is, I let it go up, but then I keep it pretty level and let it accelerate some. And this is where that EME 60 shows you that it's not afraid of a little bit of weight. I wanted to do this whole flight without touching any trim tabs, just using my flight modes. And here I'm finding that the general flying mode is doing pretty well. The plane stays pretty level even at speed. I'm satisfied with all the control surfaces now, and it's a good time to try a full-out stall. Here, just keep pulling it up till the nose drops and it falls right through and doesn't do anything funny. I did several stalls, and every one of them it just fell through nice and even, and I got control back with just a little bit of power. In this part of the flight, I was using more and more rudder to try and coordinate the turns a little bit to make sure it doesn't drag the tail around. And it really doesn't take much rudder at all to stabilize that turn. The Top-Flite P47 certainly isn't a 3D plane, but it listens to controls very well. This is one of the first warbirds I've flown that actually goes where you point it. And despite being 21 pounds of giant scale warbird, it doesn't mind it when you crank these corners around a little bit. It stays nice and stable, doesn't want to tuck a wing under or nothing, just again goes where you point it. We had some crosswinds going here, so I slowed it down, came down lower, and was using the rudder to hold the plane straight down the runway, and it seemed to like doing that. Here again, the wings stayed nice and stable. I had just decided to start doing some touch and goes, and here's where the day's fun turned a little more somber. Everybody count the wheels. Yeah, it's not enough. This was the first time that happened.
That's not good.
If you've been following this series, you know that this is the retract that got jerked out of the plane when the wheel came off. The cameraman apologized later for losing the plane because he said he was more scared than I was. I was kind of busy wondering what I was going to do with this thing. I tried putting the gear back up and then putting them back down when I came around again, and that didn't work so good either. I started using the landing gear switch to pull it up for a couple of seconds and then put it right back down again. And I started seeing some movement on that wheel. Yeah, I know a warbird doesn't roll fast enough to throw a wheel out, but I was willing to try about anything now. In between passes, I was looking for some longer grassy areas where I might do a belly landing. It's hard to see here, but I could see that the right side wheel had come out just a little bit more. So I kept short cycling that switch, and it started working. I could see more and more of that wheel as I came around.
Hey, Mike.
If you've been following this story, you know that this isn't my plane. I'm going to fly to Joe Nall this year and then turn it over to the guy that actually paid for it. And right about here is where I'm thinking I hope I can give him more than a bag full of pieces. And you can see that wheel's out again. That time around, it didn't look like it was down far enough to be locked in position, so I wanted to give it another try. I tried cycling the gear switch a couple more times, and it looks like it's down as far as it's going to go, and it should be close to being locked anyway. And then right here, the wind changed. From this direction, I had a little bit of a tailwind, but I wasn't going to land in any tailwind if I could help it, so we'll go around the other way. This wind change happens all the time in our field, so I'm pretty used to that. Right here, I'm thinking that I know this retract's been repaired, and I don't know if it's fully locked down. So this landing's going to have to be pretty decent. I didn't want to slow it down any more than normal and have it fall out of the sky. So I got it down as quick as I could and just level it out and let it settle in at its own speed. And everything held up. I'll fix the retracts, but I think we can safely say that the Maidens are done for the Top-Flite P47. It flies just fine.